Welcome to the debate. When did constant pressure become so normal that you stopped asking what it is costing you?
I mean, it is the defining paradox of modern leadership, isn't it? You look at high-achieving founders or, business owners, and on the surface, they're just holding the entire world together.
Yeah, they seem completely unflappable.
Exactly. Unflappable, productive, just totally capable. But if you get them behind closed doors, away from the team, you find this sort of quiet desperation.
Right.
They are just drowning in this constant state of urgency and overthinking. And honestly, the most alarming part is they don't even see it as a crisis anymore. That exhaustion is just, well, it's the water they swim in.
Which really brings us to the core of our discussion today. We are drawing from Mousaab Khaldi's Four Empires coaching framework.
Right, the four empires.
Yeah, which looks at leadership as an ecosystem of four distinct areas. The mindset, heart set, health set, and soul set. But specifically, we are looking at how to integrate these when the pressure just feels unbearable.
Unbearable, yeah.
So my stance is that this hidden cost to success, this relentless pressure, is fundamentally a physiological crisis. It is a collapse of the health set.
Okay, but I think
Well, we treat stress like a moral failing, right? Or a badge of honor. But it's really just biological data. It is a lagging indicator that a leader's internal rhythms are physically unsustainable.
See, I look at that exact same exhaustion and I see a completely different root cause. Yes, obviously the physical burnout is real, but I argue the exhaustion is primarily a psychological and behavioral crisis.
A behavioral crisis?
Yeah, anchored in the mindset and the heart set. I mean, the stress is absolutely a signal, but it isn't just telling you that your body is tired. It is telling you that you are chronically avoiding difficult actions,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
right? You are operating out of alignment with your own identity. The physical collapse is just, collateral damage from a deeper behavioral avoidance.
Well, let's ground this in the biology first. Because if you're listening right now, maybe running on 4 hours of sleep and your third iced coffee, you might think we're exaggerating the physical toll.
Sure, people minimize it.
But you literally cannot outthink a broken biological system. I mean, consider the data from the framework. Operating on 5 hours of sleep dropped executive function down to 52%.
Wait, down to 52? Just half capacity?
Literally half. Your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for complex problem solving, emotional regulation, and strategy, it is essentially starved of glucose.
Right.
So a founder trying to make a multi-million-dollar strategic decision on a few hours of sleep, well, they are biologically fragile. They are highly reactive. This is why the material insists that recovery is strategy, not laziness.
I hear that, but is it just a lack of sleep driving that reaction? Or, is the lack of sleep a byproduct of what's keeping them awake in the first place?
I mean, it's the physical breakdown itself that initiates the collapse of the other empires. There is this very visceral example in the material of a 38-year-old executive.
Oh, the one with the classic hustle mindset?
Yeah. The sleep when I'm dead mentality. He wore the grind like a badge of honor, waking up at 4 in the morning, pushing through until midnight, day after day. He thought he was being mentally tough.
And his body kept the score?
Violently, yeah. Within 3 months of operating this way, he actually developed stress-induced hypertension.
Wow.
The constant cortisol in his system was literally stiffening his arteries. Within 6 months, he gets a medical diagnosis of imminent cardiac risk. His timeline was 2 years until a catastrophic event.
Which is terrifying.
Exactly. And this wasn't a mindset issue. His mindset was incredibly resilient. Maybe too resilient. His wake-up call was a literal physical health crisis.
Right. The health set just gave out.
And when the health set collapses like that, the mindset, heart set, and soul set are fundamentally unsupported. You become emotionally distant, prone to overthinking, not because you lack courage, but because the biological vessel carrying that courage is fractured.
Well, that story is sobering. And I completely agree that the biological consequences are severe. But I mean, you are looking at the smoke and calling it the fire.
How so?
Let's look closer at that 38-year-old executive. Why are they choosing to stay up until midnight? Why do they refuse to disconnect? It isn't just a poor scheduling choice. It is driven by fear.
You really think it's just fear?
Almost always. The true crushing pressure comes from the weight of what the leader is not doing during the day.
Okay, explain that.
Let's paint a picture. Imagine you have a perfectly rested founder. They go to bed at 10, get a solid 8 hours, drink their water, optimize every piece of their health set. But they have a toxic co-founder.
Ah, a very common scenario.
Very common. And this founder is terrified of authentic leadership. They hate conflict. They are doing everything they can to avoid having a hard, boundary-setting confrontation with this toxic partner.
Right, so they're dodging the issue.
Yes. Now our perfectly rested founder walks into the boardroom. They are face-to-face with the person they are avoiding. What happens to their perfectly optimized biology?
Well, the sympathetic nervous system kicks in, fight or flight.
Exactly. Their body instantly floods with the exact same stress hormones. Cortisol spikes, heart rate elevates, their palms sweat, and their prefrontal cortex shuts down anyway.
Because of the immediate threat.
Right, the physiological response is downstream of the behavioral choice. This is why true change requires us to focus on responding differently, not just sleeping more.
I see the point you are making.
A leader isn't exhausted simply because they lack a bedtime routine. They are exhausted because they are carrying the psychological weight of avoided conflict. The energy it takes to constantly suppress your own boundaries is what drains the battery.
That boardroom scenario is powerful, I'll give you that. And I can see that the behavioral choice triggers a biological cascade.
Thank you.
But how do we build the capacity to make that brave behavioral choice in the first place? If we want a leader to walk into that room and handle the toxic co-founder without flinching, they need biological resilience.
But courage isn't a biological function.
I would argue it heavily relies on one. Let's break down how the brain actually processes this pressure. Elite athletic training is 50% practice and 50% recovery.
Sure.
You do not get stronger while you are lifting the weights. You get stronger while you are resting, when the muscle fibers repair. The brain's formula is identical, and this brings us to the mechanics of sleep, specifically the glymphatic system.
Ah, the brain's waste clearance system?
Yes, and it is fascinating how it works. During the day, as your neurons fire and you make decisions, your brain produces metabolic waste, specifically proteins like amyloid beta.
Right.
Think of your brain like a massive high-end restaurant kitchen during the dinner rush. By the end of the night, the counters are covered in grease, the trash cans are full, the floors are a mess.
A pretty chaotic environment to try and cook in the next morning.
Impossible to cook in. Sleep is the closing staff. When you enter deep sleep, your brain cells literally shrink by about 60%.
Wait, really? 60%?
Yeah. This allows cerebral spinal fluid to rush in like a pressure washer and scrub all that metabolic trash out of the kitchen. If you are chronically avoiding sleep, you are firing the closing staff. You are accumulating literal neurotoxins.
So the kitchen stays filthy.
Exactly. So when your founder faces that toxic co-founder, if their glymphatic system hasn't cleared the kitchen from the day before, their emotional regulation is statistically shattered.
They are reacting out of the mess.
Exactly. The stress they feel isn't just a sign of avoidance. It's the biological system begging for the recovery half of the equation. This is why having a structured space to address this is so vital.
A structured space?
Yeah, it's why stress management coaching is so critical. Not as some, superficial quick fix or just another chore to add to an overloaded to-do list, but as a confidential laboratory.
A laboratory, huh?
Yeah, a place to intentionally build these energy architectures, like turning off screens 60 minutes before bed so melatonin can naturally trigger that brainwashing process. You have to fix the physical machine before you can drive it through a storm.
Well, I do love the kitchen analogy, and I agree that if the kitchen is full of grease, the chef can't work. But what if the chef is cooking the wrong menu entirely?
How do you mean?
You are treating the human being as a purely mechanical engine that just needs maintenance, but you are ignoring the identity of the person driving it. Let's look at the integration of the heart set and soul set.
Okay, let's go there.
Founders who look successful on the outside but feel incredibly lonely, who are constantly overthinking and disconnected from their families, they're suffering from a fractured sense of purpose.
So you're saying the exhaustion is existential, not just metabolic?
Precisely. The pressure doesn't just come from metabolic waste. It comes from living a safe, highly transactional, misaligned life.
Right.
The framework material shares the author's own origin story, which perfectly illustrates this. He was an 18-year-old waiter, and the expectations around him were pushing him toward the traditional safe route.
Get the degree, get the job.
Exactly. Get a stable degree, get a normal job, live a predictable lifestyle. And even later in life, when he had acquired all the markers of success, the car, the house, the safety, he felt entirely empty.
Because he was executing someone else's blueprint.
Exactly. He was pursuing other people's goals. The stress that ultimately breaks a leader is often the realization that their current way of leading is armored, it lacks meaningful purpose.
I see.
If you don't know who you are, or if you are betraying who you are every day in your leadership by avoiding hard conversations, no amount of melatonin is going to give you peace. You can have a sparkling clean mental kitchen, but if you hate the food you are cooking, you will still burn out. This is why we have to examine the mindset and heart set.
Look, I see the connection you're making, but I still argue that you are artificially separating the identity from the biology. The framework explicitly demands their integration.
Well, sure, integration is key.
You cannot decouple them. Yes, armored leadership is a defense mechanism, but how do we dismantle that armor? Look at how the daily rhythms are structured in this framework. It starts with the 20-20-20 mindset protocol in the morning.
For those unfamiliar, that's dedicating the first hour of the day in 3 20-minute blocks.
Right. 20 minutes of vigorous movement, 20 minutes of reflection or journaling, and 20 minutes of learning or reading.
A great protocol.
It is, but it isn't just a nice, productive schedule. It is a biological primer. That first 20 minutes of movement forces your nervous system to flush out the lingering cortisol from the day before. It pulls you out of fight or flight before you even look at an email.
It changes your physiological baseline before the world can dictate it to you.
Precisely. And that physical shift is what allows the next 20 minutes of reflection, the heart-set coherence, to actually work. You are bridging the gap between having physical energy from the health set and using it for cognitive command in the mindset.
Right, getting them in sync.
When a leader goes from 52% executive function back to full capacity, because their sleep is restored and their morning is biologically grounded, they finally have the prefrontal cortex engagement required to not be reactive. They are no longer living in the amygdala.
Which is the fear center of the brain.
Exactly. That physiological restoration is what allows the authentic leadership of the heart set to emerge in real moments. You can't just mandate that a leader be vulnerable or brave. You have to physically support the nervous system so it feels safe enough to drop the arm.
Well, I absolutely agree that the nervous system needs a baseline of safety. But the support mechanism isn't just physiological. It is profoundly behavioral and social.
Social? How so?
Let's talk about the specific exercise in the framework designed to integrate all of this. It asks a very pointed question. What conversation am I avoiding? And how would my future self handle it?
A brutal question, if you are being honest with yourself.
It really is. Because it forces you to face the cognitive dissonance that is draining your energy. But the exercise doesn't stop at reflection. It explicitly mandates that the leader create when-then escape plans.
Tell us how those work in this context.
A when-then escape plan is a behavioral anchor. Like, when my toxic co-founder raises his voice in the meeting, then I will take a breath, lower my own volume, and state that we will resume when it is respectful.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. It is a 15-minute mental rehearsal to visualize a calm response. But the most crucial part of this protocol is the final step. You have to tell one person about your commitment. You have to externalize it.
So you can't keep the promise just to yourself.
No, because the hidden cost of constant pressure thrives in isolation. When you are alone at the top of a company, the imposter syndrome whispers incredibly convincing lies.
That is so true.
Every single decision weighs entirely on your shoulders, and all your relationships start to feel transactional. You can have a perfectly functioning glymphatic system, you can do your 20-20-20 routine, but if you are trapped in a silo of your own making, the pressure will crush you.
Because isolation amplifies the perceived threat.
Always. By creating that mental escape plan and actually verbalizing it to someone else, you are proving that the cost of pressure is broken in isolation and healed through authentic connection. The behavioral rewiring choice, choosing to step into the fire, having the conversation, and deciding to respond differently, is the true mechanism of change.
That externalization is undeniably powerful.
And honestly, it highlights exactly why stress management coaching is not what people generally think it is.
No, it really isn't.
People hear stress management and they think of like deep breathing exercises or someone handing them a sleep schedule and walking away.
Right. They think it's a corporate wellness seminar.
Exactly. But in reality, stress management coaching acts as that exact private, dedicated space for a leader to externalize those fears. It is a confidential environment where an executive can finally admit out loud to the conversations they are avoiding.
A safe space to vent.
Yeah, they can map out those when-then escape plans with an objective party who isn't on their payroll and isn't on their board. It seamlessly integrates the biological recovery we've talked about with the behavioral strategy you are highlighting.
The coach becomes the one person you commit to in that exercise.
Yes, it is a space to explore those avoidance loops without judgment. But I will maintain that the foundation of that commitment, the ability to actually follow through in the boardroom without retreating into defensive, armored leadership, still rests on having the biological, energetic capacity to endure the discomfort of change.
And that is exactly where these two perspectives meet, isn't it?
I think so.
The energetic capacity to endure discomfort, paired perfectly with the psychological courage to actually step into it. The framework makes it clear that the ultimate goal here is not just to have a strong mindset or a healthy body in isolation. The goal is to become anti-fragile.
And anti-fragility requires treating all four empires, mindset, heart set, health set, and soul set, as one synchronized operating system. You cannot optimize one while ignoring the rot in another.
Precisely. Because they constantly feed each other.
So if we summarize the ground we've covered today, my position remains grounded in the physical reality of human limits. The hidden cost of leadership pressure must be recognized as a biological health set issue.
Right.
The brain and body have non-negotiable physical constraints. When leaders finally view physiological recovery as a strategic advantage rather than a sign of laziness, they rebuild the neurological architecture required to lead effectively. Stress is highly valuable data. It is the biological system begging for maintenance.
And my perspective is that while the physical engine absolutely must be maintained, the pressure itself is primarily a psychological weight.
Yes.
It is born from avoided conversations, armored leadership, and a deep disconnect from personal purpose. The true cost of success is paid in the mindset and heart set, and it is ultimately solved through behavioral rewiring, making the hard choices, aligning with your true identity, and stepping out of the isolation that makes leadership so suffocating.
Where we absolutely converge, and what every listener needs to take away from this discussion, is the complete redefinition of stress. Both of our perspectives reject the notion that stress is a sign of failure, weakness, or inability.
It is never a sign that you aren't capable.
No. It is simply information. It is data indicating that a founder's current way of carrying responsibility, whether we look at it biologically or behaviorally, is no longer sustainable. It is a demand for a new rhythm.
True anti-fragility means you stop treating these four empires as competing demands on your time. You can't say, I'll focus on my health set when the product launches, or I'll work on my heart set when the board is happy.
That never works.
No. They have to be treated as one synchronized system. You cannot have cognitive command without physical vitality, and you cannot enjoy physical vitality if you are consumed by the psychological stress of an inauthentic life. They require that private, dedicated space we talked about to rebuild those rhythms together.
There is so much more to explore in this material, particularly how the soul set integrates meaning into this newly recovered energy. It leaves us with a vital question regarding our own internal operating systems and which aspect is generating the most unaddressed pressure today.
What is one pressure in your life that you have been treating as normal, even though it is asking for your attention?
If this conversation helped you see something more clearly, take the free 4 Empires assessment at mousaabkhaldi.com/assessment. And if you would like a private conversation about your leadership, business, or personal direction, you can book a free discovery call with Mousaab Khaldi at mousaabkhaldi.com.